Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight, where we shine the light and talk with business leaders from all over the world to share their insights and expertise so we can all grow together. I am your host, Heidi Schalk, and I am the co-founder of the Spotlight to Scale Accelerator, where we drive revenue for companies by making sure they're seen as the authority and go-to expert in their industry versus just another product or service. And I am joined today by Taylor Thomas with Impact Initiative. And I'm really excited to chat with you today, Taylor. So thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to chat.
So I'm going to give a little background about you and then we'll dive in deeper. So Taylor believes in the power of business to be transformative in the lives of both the team and clients involved. As a young entrepreneur, he co-founded a technology company in his early 20s and went on to found Thomas Endurance Coaching, which today is one of the most well-respected coaching programs in the world. He believes that building scalable and tech-focused companies doesn't have to come at the expense of the impact that the company has on its customers and its team. He also co-founded Impact Initiatives to help other organizations grow, scale, and increase their revenue by supporting the leaders and the teams involved by those organizations through a proprietary approach to leadership training and development. So Taylor, can you tell us what was the inspiration to co-founding Impact Initiative?
Yeah, bio sounds good when you say it, it makes me feel better about myself. Yeah, it comes down to people. I'll give you just a high level overview. I mean, so I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. As you said, I started my first business when I was in my very early 20s, done different things, different businesses, bought and sold and all the things. And that's all well and good. What I learned is that all of that boils down to people, and that we can have all of the right pieces and parts and technology. And if we do not have an organization that supports individuals showing up and stepping into their full potential, and then those individuals clearly aligned and aggregated towards a common goal, then you can have the best idea in the world and it will never go anywhere. Ask me how I know. And so Impact Initiative was founded singularly on that belief that organizations have a responsibility to individuals to create environments where they are able to step into their full potential and reach their goals, primarily over and above and beyond what they even thought possible. And that we want to help businesses, or we are here to help businesses uncover what that actually looks like, right? And to build those bridges within organizations so that people can do their best work, so that businesses can accomplish their goals. And I'll state that so people first is why Impact Initiative was founded. Secondly, is that has to yield results for the business. So one of myself and Christine, my co-founders, core tenets is that we believe in business. I love building businesses, and businesses have a few key responsibilities, right? One, they need to make money. A lot of times, ideally, they would grow and scale and bring in more people, and it goes up and out. And so if we look at business through the lens of people, we also need to make sure that our work with those individuals links to very actionable things that are executed within the business that yield results from a KPI perspective. And so one of kind of the differences with me is I think about leadership development not only through the lens of people, but also it has to tie into metrics, right? We have to drive the primary pieces of business. And the thing that I say is that my commitment to the people that I work with is I want to make sure that the work that we're doing, that it actually shows up on Monday morning when they go back to work. So it's not just fluffy, feel good, like, oh, that makes me feel great about myself. And I feel like a leader, good, now what, right? What's the thing that we're going to do that's going to move the needle within the organization that's actually going to help us accomplish what businesses are supposed to accomplish, which again are some of the things I mentioned before. So high level overview, that's me and Impact Initiative and why I started it, or co-founded it.
Yeah, so thank you for sharing all of that. Does this stem from a personal experience, because you shared, ask me how I know, were there challenges that you faced, and then this is a result now that you're helping people with, that you had to learn the hard way or learned along the way in your process? Because
Totally.
you built multiple businesses.
Yep, 100%. And and I think I'm a big believer, and I think we see this time and time again in life, is we solve the problem for ourselves before we can solve it for others.
Mm.
And that ultimately was the kind of nexus of impact initiative, is packaging what I learned the very hard way over many, many years in business to help people expedite solutions to those problems and flatten the learning curve. And so to your question, yeah, absolutely. I tried to build a business purely focused on product and revenue. That business on paper looked successful. We had a successful, relatively, again, on paper, successful exit from that company, but it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be. I didn't like my team. They didn't like me. I wasn't showing up in a way that was in alignment with who I wanted to be in the world. I was just making decisions purely from a place of like metrics and what I thought the business should be. And I wasn't a founder and leadership role in that company. And ultimately, one of my greatest regrets is that I let those people down, that company. And then even other companies that am still a part of, that I have, really worked to kind of morph and change the team and the internal infrastructure. The early days of those companies, I'm not super proud of, because it was a disservice, again, to the individuals involved, because it wasn't an environment where they could thrive, or they knew that they had full autonomy to step into their full potential. And yeah, and then it also comes from en route to trying to solve those issues for myself. I went to all the leadership conferences and the seminars and paid the people to come in and to do the things. And again, I got some really great, valuable lessons from those experiences, but ultimately I found myself with no idea of how to actually apply those things to my business. I literally found myself saying, well, I got to go back to work on Monday and lead a team of people and talk to a board and investors. And what does it do for me? Like, I feel better, but I don't know how to apply it. And so that's the next layer of impact initiative, and where Christine, my co-founder, and I really connected, and literally like spent 5 or 6 years ago at this point, sat down in a coffee shop and spent the day there just mapping out some of our real frustrations. Like, what haven't we had access to? And it was really that bridge between the people piece as well as the kind of actionable guidance that you can really deploy and sink your teeth into within an organization when you have work to do, and that, again, that's important to me, that businesses do need to move forward. And I think that there is a very specific way that we can move them forward, but there still needs to be real guidance. And so again, my mantra is like, what do we do Monday morning? But has to matter in our work. And that's what I continue to be committed to helping organizations solve.
Yeah, I think there's so much that you said there that's awesome, that's incredible. And the one thing that I'm hearing, and I've spoken with multiple people on this podcast so far, and I'm hearing the same thing. And Christine was one of our guests, so I love that both of you came on, because we're seeing two different viewpoints on things, a lot of similarities. Like, you have a similar goal, that you came together on, but also you have both have different value and expertise that you bring to the business, which is really cool for the listeners to hear and see on what's important in growth. And one of the main things that both of you have said, and multiple other people have said on here, is culture. And I think the way businesses used to function, and to your point of how you shared your past businesses, they used to focus on just revenue driven and selling the product, which is key. We don't need an expensive hobby. We need to build a revenue generating business to keep going and to support our team. But at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time with these people, right? We spend more time with our team at work than we typically do with our families. So why not make this a really more cohesive place? Are we going to butt heads? Yeah, sometimes, because there's relationships, but also giving them that availability to have ownership in what they're creating too. One, it'll create growth for you that a business owner may never realize is possible, because they're going to bring valuable ideas to the table. So yeah, I think that's incredible. Thank you for sharing. So Impact Initiative offers customized leadership training. So I want to talk about that, and the vision and the mission, and how important that is to a business in order to grow and bring that to their teams and bring and have those teams, the people that you bring on, like, as you mentioned that you didn't necessarily like the people you work with and possibly vice versa, getting them connected to the vision and the mission. So how has your company's vision evolved since its inception, and what core principles have remained constant through your evolution?
It's a great question. I mean, yeah, there's been evolution for sure in terms of everything from how we show up for our clients, right? Like from a service offering perspective, what we do now versus what we thought we'd be doing is a little bit different. But to your question, and so I'll define, I guess, how I think about like vision and mission, right? And this is something that an impact initiative we work a lot on is, vision is the target, right? This is kind of the thing that doesn't change. It's like the 100-year goal, it's out there. Mission is the arrow that takes us in the direction of the targets. The mission is like the actionable piece, the thing that like gets us out of bed in the morning that we can like make decisions against. And so the vision has really largely been unchanged, right? We made a few tweaks to some language to make sure that it's certainly as our team has grown and we intentionally layer in their language that resonates with them or expertise that they bring, or and so that's one piece of the puzzle that I think is important, is that it actually should be built from the people involved in the organization. I think this is one of the places that we often kind of go sideways with business, is that we hire the PR firm. So I've heard it described as word salad. And they give us the vision and mission, and we post that behind the reception desk, and we think we're good. It has to be meaningful, right? These are actual tools that we use within our businesses to weigh our decisions against, right? Whether that's hiring decisions or whether that's product development decisions or growth or so on. So the vision has remained largely unchanged. And I think the mission is something that we really have worked and continue to work to come back to and make sure that it's actionable. That for me is the piece that we're always refining to the extent that I want it to be usable, right? Like these are very real tools, like I said. And so with every new hire we make, let's come back to the mission, right? Like, how does that matter? Is this in alignment with decisions that we make in the business? Is it in alignment with our mission and vision? And so that's the piece that I really work to stay connected to, because it's easy to get derailed. It's easy to, there's any number of ways and lenses through which we could look at business and the decisions that we make. And we're responding to all different types of input and market fluctuations, and the list goes on. Ultimately, I do believe, and I know for a fact, because I see it play out every day in the work that I do with my own businesses, as well as those of our clients, is if you use mission and vision as an actual tool, it actually helps to eliminate or cut down on a lot of that noise, right? Like if it is not in alignment with those things, then it is probably not in alignment with the business that you set out to build. If you're in a founder position, or if you're in, any position within the organization as it relates to the work that you're doing, right? You're on the product dev side, you're in engineering, you're in marketing, like, is it in alignment with these things? Is what we're putting out in the world in alignment? And so, yeah, I think it's less for me about kind of there's been tweaks and changes, but for me, the real work is in staying connected to it and building a business consistently in alignment with those things. And I think that is really where the work is done. And truthfully, the real challenge, because it is hard, because there's lots of inputs. It's easy to get swayed, especially as businesses get bigger and bigger, right? You have more input, there's more people, there's more voices. You are beholden to more, stakeholders. But I think that really is the North Star.
Yeah, it's an extremely important piece of creating and building a successful business. So let's talk about the services that you provide. So your services include executive leadership coaching and team intensives. Can you share a success story where the approaches that because you mentioned a proprietary approach that you all have. Can you share more about that, and then a case study or a success story that you have that led to significant improvements for one of your clients?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll back up or just speak a little bit to the proprietary piece. I know a lot of people say that, and it's very well true. There's all kinds of, IP out there that yields great results. But that was really the first step when we founded Impact Initiative, was to have a very real system. And so we spent the next year after that meeting at a coffee shop and decided this was something that we wanted to solve from a pain point perspective. We spent the next year building a system and a curriculum and a process that we can guide people through, that links that foundational work, that builds those bridges for people and yields actionable takeaways that they can actually deploy inside their organization. So all the things I said, it's not just us talking at people. We actually have a system and a program and processes and all of these tools and resources that we deploy at very strategic times within the life cycle of working with that client that actually move the needle. And I'm a systems and process guy. So that's where my brain always goes. I say, this is great. How are we going to solve it? Right? What are the things that have to be created to actually do this thing? And so we set out to do that, and that's what exists now. And we've made lots of tweaks to that, but ultimately still use the foundational pieces of that. And so what we've found out from like a deployment perspective as it relates to the work that we do is one of the best ways to start is to get the individual or individuals out of their environment. So that's why we typically would start with the intensive, you might call it an offsite, people call it a retreat, right? It's that, right? We're having an intentional, what we call pattern interrupt, where we are getting those individuals out of their space. Typically, we do not do those at the office where those people are at. We'll get another facility. We have facilities that we work with. We have a home base in Denver, Colorado, as well as stuff on the East Coast and the West Coast. And the goal of that is if you want to do different things, you actually have to take different action. And so when you're in the same environment, it can be hard to compartmentalize and think differently about what it looks like to take different action because you're in a similar space. And so we start there. And one of the clients, I'll give you a recent example. We have an executive client that is in the entertainment industry and worked with a company within that organization or within that industry for a long time, and had some real culture misalignments. And what this individual wanted for their life and their culture was really different than what the organization was providing. And so he reached out to us and they said, is this just me, or do I need to adapt, or is it the wrong culture? And he had been with this organization for, almost 2 decades and had reached a very high, degree of success in terms of his network and his net worth. And so it's a very hard decision to make. And so what we did was just set out to really just help this individual and ultimately his team understand what does it look like to be in alignment with a culture, and how can we help to build those bridges. And so I'll fast forward. We worked with this individual. We typically work with clients for, fairly long commitment periods because these things take time to change. And when we start to change things, ultimately, 6 months or a year from now, things are different, right? The business has grown. We have a different team. And so we like to sit side by side and really come in kind of a fractional capacity with these individuals and really help them kind of solve these core challenges within their businesses. And what we saw with this individual is it wasn't a him thing. There was some core fundamental cultural misalignments. And that had showed up in how he had hired. That had showed up in how he had developed client relationships. That had shown up in how he built his contract for himself personally. So once we helped him understand what does true alignment look like, what is the language that he needs to use to describe the work he does and how he shows up in the world and the impact that he wants to make on his clients and his team, then it was clear he had to make some changes. So then we actually helped him navigate to a new role within that industry, find somewhere where there was cultural alignment, hire people that were in alignment from a place of kind of the foundational pieces of who he is and what he wants. And ultimately he saw a tremendous amount of growth from a revenue perspective. So, right, that's one of the things that holds us back is we think, if I make these changes, it's going to cost me a lot of money. What if I miss out on clients? Or what if and it's not totally unfounded, but the fact of the matter is that when we make decisions from a place of scarcity or fear, it never yields the results that we want, right? It's always going to cap us or limit us.
Right.
So when we start to develop this shared language, when we understand what our mission and vision is, our values, we actually use those as tools to inform the decisions that we make. What it does is it opens up lots more opportunity than we ever thought, right? We couldn't see it. And so I like to say, like, what you look for, you'll find, right? So when you're looking for things through this lens of like, I don't know, is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. There's not good alignment, but I'm scared to move on, or I'm scared to make this decision, or what if my team hates me? Whatever that language is, you're going to find information and you're going to make decisions that fortify that. Get on the other side of that, it starts to give you a new runway. The path ahead looks different. And ultimately, there's a lot of opportunities out there that we just don't see because we're looking through things, looking at things through a different lens. So ultimately, we still work with this individual. He's gone on, he's building a team, thriving. And it was truly just a function of recognizing, like, what does alignment look like? How do we use these tools that I'm talking about in an actionable way? It's not just a nicety to have that we put up on a billboard or a whiteboard. We're using them to actually make decisions against. And then we've gone on to help his team do the same thing, right? So now we start to build bridges within the organization so that everybody has a common language and a shared mission vision, and that we're running an organization, tactically through the lens of the people involved in the organization. And they have 10x their revenue and are set to go on to do amazing things this year. So yeah, it's just compounding now, right? Now that the pieces are in place.
And he's much happier. And I'm sure he enjoys what he's doing much, much more because he's built that team
Totally.
around him. Yeah. Which is going to drive more revenue because happy people.
Yeah. That was the first piece of feedback we got, is he said, man, I am so much happier. And I'm literally getting that feedback every day. They're like, you seem happier, from family, friends, peers, coworkers. He's like, I didn't even realize that I wasn't happy, or that I was conveying, or kind of putting off this vibe, so to speak. But yeah, it's a tough place to be, right? When you're constantly trying to dig yourself out of this place where you're just not confident, or you're not sure, or you're not right, like whatever the not is, when that goes away, or at least you have tools to navigate that, because there's always stress. It's not that you mitigate, or it's not that you get rid of the frustrating things or the stressful time periods. It's that you have the tools to mitigate and navigate them, so they're not as disruptive, and you can see what the path forward looks like, and you can make decisions again from that place versus the limited place.
Yeah, and happy is going to attract happy, right? Your energy attracts who you want to, who you are, draws people in. So if you're showing up positive and optimistic and happy, then you're going to attract people like that too, both on the customer side and client side, and also on the team building inside of your team dynamic side as well. And you mentioned something, what you look for is what you find. And I really like that, because somebody else I was interviewing said, when you look for opportunities, opportunities appear. So being open to that, what are you looking for? Being open to finding the people that you want, trusting that the people are out there, and going in search for them, and just opening up that space to attract them is amazing. What you'll bring in, and share it, right? Tell people what you're looking for, because people know people, and they'll share that as well. You shared something else, but I lost it, and I can't remember, but it'll come back to me and I'll ask you about it. But it was so good as well. But I really liked that saying, if what you look for is what you'll find. Oh, it was like that saying, if you can or can't, you're right.
You're right. Yeah.
It's just like that saying, it kind of goes hand in hand. So yeah, so good. So good. So you mentioned your retreats, your off location processes. That's what it was, your processes. Understanding too, that this is a process. You didn't get here in one day. It's not going to be solved in one day, right? This is a journey and a process in order to create what you want to create and fix what's already been happening. Not necessarily fix it, just go, okay, what worked and what's working and not working. And let's now work on fixing what's not working and make it to where it works. But again, that doesn't happen overnight as much as we want it to, right? It happened yesterday. It takes time.
It'd be nice.
Yeah. And understanding that and trusting the process that you and Christine have put in place with Impact Initiative. So let's talk about those retreats that you were talking about, the offsite processes and events. So they blend movement and mindset practices. How do these two elements contribute to personal and professional development?
Yeah, I think again, it's the experiential piece is something that's important for us. And that stems very much from, what I was talking about earlier, which is just this kind of general, I don't want to use the word frustration, but I guess that probably captures it. I went to the conference, and you're in and it just wasn't that much different than the environments I was normally in, right? I did that for the weekend, and I got off the plane and I went back to my office, and then I was back on a plane and doing something. I was like, this feels the same, right? This isn't wholly different. And so again, it was hard for me to think about things differently because it just was the same environment. And so the experiential component is something that is really important, and it's something that we really advocate for. I will say that depending on the team, it is not a must, right? We can still create that environment if, for instance, movement isn't something that is important for folks, or they don't find that particularly in alignment with their team's values, or just doesn't make sense for that particular team because of time constraints or whatever. But the goal is that we're doing something different, right? And that we're actually intentionally exposing ourselves to different experiences and environments so that we can think about things differently. And there's just such a strong link between the body and the mind, right? And that when we expose our body to different things, ultimately it opens up our mind to different things. And I know that might sound maybe kind of woo-woo, and I promise you that I'm not that person. I'm like so tactical and execution based, but also like I've been an athlete my entire life. That's what TEC is, we're a business accelerator for coaches in the health and wellness space. And we work with athletes all over the world. And, I believe in the connection. And one of the most fundamental things for me as an entrepreneur has been to always have a consistent movement practice, right? When I show up for myself physically, I'm then able to show up for others in the way that I need to professionally. Those things are inexorably linked for me. Now, I recognize that doesn't have to be the case for everyone, but from my experience, and I'll speak for Christine as well, that's a very important part of that world, right? Mm-hmm. Is that those two things are linked. And so that can look and feel like any number of different things. We love to do contrast therapy, right? Cold and sauna. We love to do, hikes, morning workouts with the team or the individuals before the intensive, and it doesn't, again, at whatever level of intensity it makes sense. It could be a walk. It can be, we've rented out gyms and done full blown workouts. We've, brought yoga instructors in. We've got breath work experts. We just want it to intentionally look and feel different so that you can get different results, so that you can think about things differently, and setting the stage with some movement, breaking up those days with movement, right? Sitting in a conference room for 6 or 8 hours a day is not particularly engaging, right? I feel like I can be a really great speaker and I can hold a room pretty well, but ultimately around hour 4 or 5, you're going to start to get glazed over. I don't care how many snacks and treats and coffees we give you. So there is an intentionality to the flow of that day. We will break that up. We really try to break that up with different types of modalities, whether again, it's just a walk, or we go to facilitate this session in a 20-person sauna. We want it to be intentionally different. And I think that there's just a massive opportunity in this space and in the work that we do as leaders to give ourselves permission to do them differently as well, right? It doesn't have to be in a conference room. Right. Just because that's where a lot of our work takes place traditionally, it doesn't have to be that way. I think there's an opportunity to give ourselves permission to try new things and to think about things differently and actually uncover some very real results. And then from a process perspective, our goal then, if you've ever done an offsite, or for anyone listening, oftentimes too, what happens is we do that intensive or offsite retreat. And again, we're like, man, this was great. And then we're kind of left high and dry, right? We're like, here's your follow-up information, and go. So what we do with our clients is after the intensive, we actually intentionally work with them on an ongoing basis. Again, we typically use those offsites or intensives to kind of bookend our work, and we build on that. And so we work fractionally within those organizations to help them actually apply what we learned from the intensive, apply each individual's takeaways, and how that actually can manifest, and how we can help build systems and processes around these people's strengths and weaknesses, right? Where do people need support? It's not something that we have a lot of time for inside of organizations. So that's really like we bear the burden of that and kind of shoulder that load because it's really hard to do. And right, so we interview the people and get to know them and break out strengths and weaknesses, and then can come back to the teams, the managers, the leadership, and say, hey, here's like the one thing you can do with John to really help him excel based on what we've recognized, right? And then that way, like slowly things start to turn, right? And in 3 to 6 months, we have a really cohesive team that communicates effectively and trust each other, and you're right, they're collaborating better, and then the wheels start to turn and momentum starts to happen. So that's kind of the through line of the process piece, is it's building on, on either side of those intensives so that you actually move the needle, and it's not just like a feel good. I think that's, in my experience, that's been a lot of why companies have done offsites. It's like, oh, we just need like a morale boost. Yeah, I mean, fair. Also, can we get something out of it, right? Can we actually use it? Can it be double duty? And that's why we put these together the way that we do, because it can and should be both, in my opinion. It should be very, very actionable. There should be a very high ROI, right? So if we do that, it is my responsibility to make sure that the organizations we work with see a very clear return, right? And we see that every time, right? So the investment, within 3 to 6 months, you're seeing 5 or 6x what you invested, because again, happy people, right? Like we talked about. Yeah, people, communication goes a long way. All of these structures start to really yield results. And so, yeah, I think again, there's just an upgrade for the kind of narrative around these experiences and how we can actually think about them as very real tools within our organizations.
Yeah, no, I think like you said, it's great to have these offsites, but if we're just building morale, just like you shared with the conventions that you would go to, you get something out of it, but then when you're back on the net, back in the office on Monday, it's just like, okay, what do I do now? So building that morale is great, but then if the culture is the same and nothing shifted in the office, that is it's not going to be long-term change, right? And if you want something different, you must do something different, just like you were sharing. And I'm hearing too, the way you do things you're building trust with these people too. And they're building trust with each other with these offsites. They're getting to know each other on a deeper level. They're spending more time like in a different arena, not just in the conference room, like you're sharing. They're doing yoga or they're doing hikes, and maybe there's moments where they're supporting each other in a way that would be different, which is building, relationships on a different level. So it's not competition, it's cooperation, right? You're taking any competition that might have been happening in the boardroom out of it, and now they're more in cooperation. And you're talking to them and going, what's happening? Like, what do we need? And then you can go back to management, which I think is great, because if our team is fractured or our internal culture is a little fractured, then they may not be able to feel comfortable going to the management and sharing their concerns. So when they're bringing it to you, then it kind of like takes that uncomfortableness away. And then when they're seeing their management take action on that trust is being brought back into the mix, which I think is powerful. So can you share, how can somebody listening right now connect with you? If they're like, I want to reach out to you, Taylor, like how can they connect with you? Where can they find you?
I try to be very available or very easy to find. A good place to start is our website, impactinitiative.network. You can reach us there, and there's a button in the top right corner. You can get a hold of us. And also Instagram, I'm active there. So that is at taylor.j.thomas. And send me a message there, engage. I post a lot of content about what we talked about, whether it's business, leadership, personal development, peak performance, growth, and so on. Yeah, those would be the two best places. And yeah, I'm more than happy to be a resource. I believe in putting good stuff out in the world, and I think that it'll come back. So if I can answer questions, if I can, somebody, it doesn't have to lead anywhere. Truly, I'm here to be a value add for anyone. And if I can help flatten the learning curve or provide feedback or guidance, I'm more than happy to do that. So please reach out. I mean that genuinely when I say it. There's enough people trying to gatekeep out there. I'm not one of those people.
No, Taylor's so easygoing, such a nice guy. So definitely connect with him, reach out to him. He'll respond. Go to Instagram. It's Taylor.J, right?
Yeah,
Taylor.J.Thomas at Instagram, and then also LinkedIn. And we'll have all of Taylor's links in the show notes. So feel free to go check him out there. You can connect with him there as well and grab his information. Impactinitiative.network is the website. You can connect with them there. I have a question for you because you've built multiple businesses. So somebody listening, like, this is called Business Growth Spotlight, and we want to talk about how to grow. And one of those ways, in order to be able to get out there, share, and talk to your ideal clients, your customers, and make your offers and share with how you can work with them, or vice versa. How have you best, what were your best ways of getting seen, getting the eyes on you? Because you had mentioned earlier that the gentleman that you shared with his success story, he found you, he reached out to you. But how have you been getting Impact Initiative out there, or any of your previous businesses, to be seen and get visible out in the market?
It's a great question. I mean, I think it is top of mind for everyone, as it should be, right? And it's truthfully the biggest problem to solve in any business is, how do you get customers? You got to get eyes on you. People's attention is dramatically diminished, right? We don't get much of it, even when they do find us. And so the messaging has to land, to speak very specifically to their pain points. You have to know your customer well. Our early days, any company, in the first, I'll give it a time frame. This is not a hard and fast rule, but I'll say in the first 3 years, I think it's just purely relationship driven, right? Like, how many people can you meet? Specifically, if you're in a founder role, your job is to be the face of that business and get that face in front of as many people as possible. And you start small, right? Like, when I first started TEC, I literally just went around to so again, we work with athletes. In the early days, we worked exclusively with endurance athletes, so runners, cyclists, swimmers, triathletes, things like that. I just went around to every specialty retail store that I could find and just ask if I could give a talk for free on some piece of value that I could add. Hey, best practices for training. I was just coming off of being a professional athlete, and I was like, I'll show up. What do you want me to do? Right? I just want to add value. Right? Well, 10 people show up, 20 people, whatever. And I literally did that for years. And I tried to do as many as I could. And I would just drive. If there was another 20 miles, 100 miles, as it grew a little bit, get on an airplane, right? I picked target markets to say, like, can I do this? Can I touch down and do 20 of these in the course of a week? Right. And so just building partnerships, building relationships, being in front of people. And then you can start to leverage, a bit of economy of scale, right? Once you have some people on your list, you can ask for referrals, you can, but I think when you're building, I know I'm guilty of this, we lose sight of the importance of just connecting with people. Right. Now, for me, right, I try to do that a lot on stage. I like to speak, and I like really to speak to people, like I said, purely from a place of value. I just want to help you, right? If you want to work with me, that's excellent. I would love to do that. Also, I hope that you take this information and I hope you go back and put it to work in your organization in a meaningful way if you never talk to me again, because rising tide lifts all ships, right? And so, again, I'm not here to gatekeep. And I want to work with the right clients who are motivated and excited and see value. But if there's people in the audience, that's great. I genuinely mean that. So I think, again, just like making connection, leading with value, I think that's a piece that I'll add on or just call out specifically. In my opinion, we ask too much, right? And until you've built trust with somebody, you can't ask them to buy something from you, right? And so we go on social media, or we go on, whatever, we send an email, we do cold outreach, or hey, buy my thing. Why would they buy your thing? They don't know you. They don't trust, right? Like, so again, build trust, build value. How would you build a friendship? Hey, let's get coffee. Let's get coffee again. I'm going to ask some more questions about you. I'm going to do that a lot until finally both parties would say, we're friends. I can trust you. It doesn't happen overnight. So I think, I think about customer acquisition like I think about very real friendships, is you have to build trust first. There's lots of ways to do that. And there's lots of ways to do that at scale. But I think if we keep that as the core tenet, that's what yields to conversion. And I think, again, let's not lose sight of just talking to people.
Yeah.
And I think if you're early in business, I believe that there's a piece of it that you got to hit the ground, right? You got to go, right? And I have a home office. I work remotely. All of my companies are remote. I'm still on an airplane nearly every week. You got to be there, right? You got to connect with people. You got to add value. You got to listen. And then that starts to snowball. And then you can deploy lots of other tools. And of course, there's a million ways to get at this acquisition piece. But again, I do think that it's trust-based and I think it's relationship-based. And if you think about how to scale those two things and don't lose sight of the value that you add, I think you're onto something, right? But we just can't lose sight of those first two things, trust and relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Relationships are key. And, with the evolution of AI and it's good, the bigger it's getting, it's never going to take away that key piece to building a business, which is relationships, because that comes from us, right? And building it. And like you said, it takes a little time and, be willing to give, like, right. Be willing to give value. Don't give to get. When we give to get, it doesn't feel good on either party, right? It doesn't feel authentic, and people want to buy from people. They want to work with people that they trust, just like you said. Whether it's your clients or customers or with your team, you're going to get more from your team when you're giving to them and when they can trust you. They're going to want to do more and they're going to want to produce. They're just going to naturally do it because they're happy, right? We talked about that.
Right.
They're happy.
Right.
So yeah, such great advice. And like you said, yeah, when you get the DMs and they're just like, here, buy my product. How do you even know I have that problem? Right? Like you don't even know you don't even know if somebody has that problem or what's top of mind. And they may not have the problem, but they may know 20 people that have the problem, but you're not even going to get there because you didn't even start by building that relationship to get that far. So
yeah, and I'll add, I think one of the things that keeps people from taking action in any particular direction is they feel like they don't have enough of an audience, right? Oh, if I show up, who's going to be there? If I do this post, who's going to be there? I always say, like, do it for the one, right? Like there's one person, if there is one person, and I mean this, like, and I say this to myself every day, there's one person on the other side of whatever you're doing that listens and got value from it, keep doing it for them, right? And the one will lead to two. And, because we're in the world where like everything is such high volume, followers, clicks, convert, whatever. Do it for the one. Don't let your perceived lack of impact or your perceived lack of a ripple effect keep you from showing up. And then the sum total of the effort is what compounds. So just as a reminder, I think that it's easy to get in your head, no matter what stage of business you're in, that it's not enough, right? I don't have enough people. I don't have enough emails. I don't have do it for the one and keep doing it and it'll build. And consistency always compounds. There is no way you can do something consistently and not get better at it and it not yield results. You just got to do it for long enough.
Right. People give up too fast. And that's a whole nother conversation because we're over time and I apologize, but I'm so grateful. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you, Taylor, so much for being here with me today. So many gold nuggets. So grateful for everything you shared and all of your gifts. So thank you so much for this.
Thanks, Heidi. This was a blast.
Thank you for joining Taylor and I today on the Business Growth Spotlight. And thank you to our sponsor, HLH Growth Solutions. If you feel your business is blending in and you're ready to grow your visibility, be seen as the expert in your space and scale to the next level, then go ahead and grab our free Spotlight to Scale blueprint. You can go to spotlighttoscale.com/blueprint. And again, make sure that you connect with Taylor. You can find him at taylor.j.thomas on Instagram. Go to check him out on LinkedIn, and you can also go connect with them and check out the company at impactinitiative.network. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Business Growth Spotlight.